When programming films for our YouTube channel, there are shorts that we instantly know will be hits. Tim Egan's tense horror short, Curve, is a prime example. A high concept premise combined with striking visuals, it's exactly the type of film the YouTube audience loves. It's also the type of film that provokes debate. Over the 3 years that the film has lived on our channel, we've loved watching the YouTube comments come in. From analysis of the story to fan theories on escape, we've seen it all. With the film continuing to prove a hot topic among our viewers, we thought it was about time to invite Curve creator Tim Egan onto our channel to discuss some of your burning questions.
I just woke up with a feeling of vertigo in my stomach. I sort of had that weird feeling when you're coming out of a dream and you just sort of feel that you're falling for a second. And it was terrifying to me. And I was lying flat on a bed and I was completely safe. But for a moment, I felt my life was in danger. And that was the very beginning of it. I've looked back as to where that might have come from. One of the things I quite often talk about as inspiration, a few years previous to writing the film, I was hit by a car. I was just crossing the road, heading home after a day's work, and someone tried to beat the lights and just clean me up. And the next thing I remember, I'm flat face down on the road, and I can feel the hard road underneath me. I can feel the water, the rain coming down, and knowing that if I'm in the road, there's a very good chance there's another car coming right behind it. And that's it. I'm done. I was like 2 seconds ago, I was walking home, and now I might die. Like, now I'm this close to death. So I wasn't thinking about that when I wrote the film, but, you know, you start to try and find the beginnings of these ideas, and just working backwards, that had to be a part of it. I started to think a lot about Rorschach tests, and that they're ink blots, and you fold them out, and essentially you can then, what you see in it is more a reflection of you. And I tried very hard not to overthink it. I sort of pulled together these few little elements and said, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, because it's the starting off point of a lot of different ideas. I know what it means to me personally, and I know what I think it's about. And yes, certainly those ideas of depression, anxiety, facing yourself as the greatest enemy, addiction, all are very important to me in the creation of this story. But I also really love it when people find something in the film that I haven't seen. I wanted it to be something that reflected back at you. And I love hearing theories from people who've seen something I never intended, but makes perfect sense. I think that's brilliant. I wanted the feeling that any of us could end up there at any point. She just happened to be there. The injuries that she's got indicate that how she got there was kind of rough. But again, I don't want to give too many specifics because that's part of what I love about the film. But somehow she's ended up in a life or death situation, and she's got almost no tools. She's got the friction under her hands. She's got a shoe that's twisted underneath her backside, and that's pretty much it. And as she finds out, she's got a chain around her neck as well. One of the thoughts I had as I was putting it together was that she had a dog leash. She'd been out walking the dog. And I liked that because it gave that feeling of just being thrown into this in a random point in your life. But I ended up taking out because I personally, if I was watching that film, and I think most people would spend the whole film saying, what the hell happened to the dog? Please let the dog be okay. And that wasn't the point of the film. So I took it out, and it became a necklace that she eventually finds that helps her get the grip. We built half of what you see, essentially, and then flipped everything in post and used an empty curve as the other side. But essentially, it's one curve and a back wall that we created. It was a really challenging set to build because it needed to be covered in water. We needed to be able to clean it. We needed to be able to get blood on it and off it. It needed to look like solid rock, which obviously it wasn't. We needed to be able to run a harness through it so Laura could be pulled up and down all day and it'd be relatively comfortable. I was just absolutely gobsmacked the first time I saw it. It's what I was hoping for, but I honestly wasn't sure we were going to get that. And when we turned the lights on, my gaffer came in, we lit it, and we turned the camera on, and I said, that's it. And I don't think I've ever had that on another film where you just look through the lens and go, that's exactly what I wanted. The reverse of it, where we look out into the chasm, that's some visual effects work. We made a sky overhead, and then we removed the ground to give it this sort of yawning chasm. But we tried to do as much in camera as possible. It's something you don't want to talk too much about because the whole point is that it's fun to not have all the answers to these things, and it was deliberately set up with that in mind. I put them there mainly as a challenge. The space itself works to challenge her. We know it's got a voice. It talks to her from down below, and it shows her in a way. Maybe it's mocking her and saying you can't possibly succeed because no one ever does, or every effort that she makes, it's simply pointing out how close she is to falling. So she pushes herself up, and it shows her how close she came to. It basically shows her the aftermath of what if she'd gotten that wrong. I wanted her to do pretty much what I would do. And okay, so she's got the foot curved beneath her. The first thing you do is try and put your weight on that. Okay, you can't. That doesn't work. Anyone who's trying to climb anything will find it easier to do it facing. So can she turn around? No, she can't do that either. So essentially, it was a series of me exploring what I would do and constantly finding problems with that. I'd try and push myself up. What if my hands were slippery? I'd try and turn around. What if there wasn't enough friction for me to do that? And what if I finally solved all these problems and it started raining? So the idea for me is that every time she's presented with a challenge, every time she's presented with a difficulty, she finds a way to overcome it. So that's for me is the answer to the film. Whatever it throws at her, she's going to find a solution. So to me, it is a hopeful film. I thought the fight was the story, so I didn't need to actually see her escape. But for me, everything it throws at her, she comes back with a solution. So for me, it is a hopeful story. I did find one group of people when the film was first released online who were utterly bemused by the film, and that was rock climbers. They thought it was utterly ridiculous that someone couldn't get out of this situation. They saw that as basically somewhere they would fall asleep. That was not even any kind of danger to them at all. So I am sorry, rock climbers, they would easily get out of that situation. For me, the film is the whole idea. That's always what I wanted it to be. I never needed it to be a second longer. I never needed any more to it. But the film was very successful in its way when it was released. And so people do come to you and say, if you were to write a feature of this, we did have quite a few of those conversations. And I would come back and say, oh, it's a short. And the response was always like, well, if shorts do well, they become features, which is not a mentality I love. But it was put to us that you should at least think about it. And so we did. And originally I never had much interest in going anywhere else with it because I didn't see much point. I'd said what I wanted to say with it. We did have a couple of ideas, and I don't want to give too much away in case we ever come back to these, but I didn't want the film to be a series of death traps that someone goes through. That's not what it was for me. It wasn't just someone endlessly facing life or death situations. It was about the struggle in this one moment. But we did look at a space that just to expand and make it a little more difficult for her, that changed and evolved as she worked against it. So that was something that we did look at expanding. And if we had gone down that role, she might have met other people who had either been in the predicament or were stuck in it themselves. It was something we explored. But honestly, for me, it's a short film. And I love it the length it is. And it is the entirety of the idea.